Brandon Johnson continues his media tour of trying to revitalize his image. And I have to admit, he's been getting worldwide attention, but once again, he shows that he is just the wrong man for the moment. He continues to try and spin what's going on in Chicago with regards to crime, with regards to the budget. And this time, he has Don Lemon, former CNN host, helping him out.
I was here for the Democratic National Convention, and no, it's not a hellhole. It's not an emergency. Oh, look, behind us. There's the mayor. There's the mayor, Mayor Brandon Johnson.
I had to stop really quickly right here because this is so reminiscent of another video I did about Brandon Johnson a few weeks ago, where he did a walking tour through Austin with NBC reporter Marianne Ahern, where he was flanked and surrounded by CPD and private security. And you see right there, you see you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are just the 5 that we can see in frame, and then we know we have other police officers that are across the street. Again, just he doesn't understand the optics. He's trying to tell people that Chicago is safe, but he can't go anywhere without a full armed detail. But let's keep checking it out.
There he is.
What's up, man? I think I got something in my there. What's going on, man?
Looking good. You're all dressed up. I thought you were going to be cash. You got stuff to do?
Hold on a second. Do I got something up there?
No, I think
I feel like I got
Oh, yeah, you do. You do.
Do it. Thank you.
It's a little, there was some lint there.
Yeah,
You're good now.
I know. I'm always good, but yeah.
How are you?
Yeah,
it's
but
good to see you.
Hey, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
people
this is
people
casual,
address
man.
you like you're the mayor or something.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a beautiful city, and
Are you kidding me? You know I used to live here.
Yeah,
I know. I was a local anchor. Here's what I want to say to you.
How you doing?
Hi.
First time I've seen you.
If we get maybe it's because people love you that the president of the United States wants you jailed. What he wants you and the governor. What's up with that?
Well, look, you know, the president of the United States of America has declared war on the city of Chicago and American cities across our country, and you know, we're going to continue to defend working people, our democracy, and protecting, you know, our humanity. But, you know, as you can tell, I mean, the city of Chicago it's the soul of America, right? I believe we're the global capital of the world, and it's an honor to serve in this capacity.
Yeah. Look, I mean, this is Daley Plaza.
Yeah.
A couple of dailies were made.
Yeah, there's been a couple of dailies, right? You know, but look, for as far as I'm concerned, hey, what's going on, you all? Hey, what's up, West Side? Yes.
Thank you.
And enjoy your birthday. Well, you know, this is not the first time that Donald Trump has, you know, called for a black man to be jailed. You know, so I'm not going anywhere. You know, look.
You know, Don Lemon missed an opportunity right there. If you go back and you look at the last interview or the last upload that I did where Pamela Brown from CNN was interviewing Brandon Johnson, he used that exact same line that, oh, this isn't the first time. I'm not the first black man that President Trump has tried to jail. And to Pamela Brown's credit, she immediately said to him, well, to be honest, President Donald Trump said that you and the governor need to be in jail. Now, that aside, that we're not here to pick apart whether or not that's applicable or not. But at least Pamela Brown showed that she was an actual journalist. She didn't allow him to spin that like this was about race. He made a political statement, Donald Trump did, saying that the Governor Pritzker, the governor of the state of Illinois, and that the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, should be in jail because they have an ideological difference. But Don Lemon, he's just being a sycophant here, not pressing. And again, it just gets worse from here. I'm going to skip a lot of the kind of in between things where they're interacting with the people in the city because that's not germane to this video. But keep watching. It gets worse from here.
This city is built on, you know, our love and conviction around our diversity. Yeah. So whether it's, you know, immigrants from around the world or families like mine that migrated from the South, descendants of slaves that have built, you know, really an incredible apparatus for working people.
Sorry, I had to stop again because if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, it is not a Brandon Johnson speech unless he makes a reference to both his race and slavery. It's not even remotely germane to the question that Don Lemon asked him, but he just cannot help himself. He has to play that race card at every single opportunity, whether it's germane, whether it's a non sequitur, whether it's superfluous. He cannot help himself.
Let me read some stats to you because we got here and we actually saw someone sweeping the streets, sweeping the streets. And we're like, you would never see that in New York. And it reminded me, like when there was a parade here when I lived here, the streets could be trashed within 20, 30, 40 minutes, sparkling clean. Like the city runs. It's like clockwork. So let me ask you, because if you look at, I'm going to read some stats to you. In the past 6 months of this year, Chicago has seen a 33% reduction in homicides, 38% reduction in shootings. Overall violent crime is down 21.6%. So why is this administration saying that Chicago is a war zone? He said it's worse than Afghanistan.
Well, he's absolutely wrong. You know, we have done a great deal of work to ensure that we're investing in the communities that have been historically left out. And because of our investments in young people, where we hired 31,119 young people for summer jobs, it's over a 52% increase. We've expanded mental and behavioral health care services. We're building affordable homes. And as a result of our work with our detectives division, which I promoted 200 more detectives, there's stronger collaboration between all of government, the full force of government. We are seeing a decline in homicides and shootings, shooting victims, robberies. Now look, Don, we have a lot of work to do. One shooting, one homicide is one too many. I'm not saying that we have solved poverty in every single economic challenge that people have endured for a very long time, but we're clearly moving in the right direction.
Another one of his famous lines, hey, violent crime is down. Now we know we still have work to do. He said he has rehearsed that so much that it doesn't even sound genuine. And then let me just say, because he often touts getting summer jobs to Chicago youth, that's some huge win. Brandon Johnson, adults need jobs in the city of Chicago. Adults, grown people, the parents of those children, they're the ones who need the jobs. And you know how you're going to revitalize Chicago economically? Law and order. Law and order. Once you get that under control, you'll see an economic revitalization of the city. And then maybe those kids who are getting summer jobs can go to summer school because of the abysmal reading and math scores in CPS. And then maybe if their parents get a better job, that'll redound to the benefit of both families and communities and the city. But he talks about the summer job thing for kids so often. I haven't had an opportunity to frame it like that. I think it's silly, but let's keep listening.
Well, look, I'm going to one more stat before we talk about some other things, because he said it was a war zone or worse than Afghanistan. Afghanistan ranks 9th on the global organized crime index among U.S. cities. Among U.S. cities with the highest murder rate in 2024, Chicago isn't even in the is a thing. So, and so why is the National Guard here?
Well, they shouldn't be. And we're grateful for the ruling that came out yesterday with this temporary restraining order against the Trump administration. We're all clear that this president is trampling all over our Constitution. And this is an incredible overreach. What he has proposed is unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's unnecessary, and it's dangerous.
Why is he getting away with it? You think he's going to defy a federal judge because he's saying, well, we need the National Guard there to protect the ICE agents?
Well, he's certainly trying to, and that's why we're standing firm in Chicago. I said I'm going to defend the people of Chicago, and here's what I mean by that. We put forth 3 sweeping executive orders to ensure that people know their rights, that there's a clear distinction between local law enforcement and federal agents, that we're protecting our fundamental right to be able to protest, and of course, the latest executive order prohibiting ICE from setting up its operations on city-owned property.
Yeah.
I covered these 3 executive orders in a previous video. And by the way, I'm going to put the entire playlist of all the Brandon Johnson videos at the end of this video, so you can go back and you can watch those. I've been covering this for over 2 years, so there's a ton of information there. But let me just say, he keeps saying that he wrote an executive order that lets Chicagoans know that they have a right to protest. This is why so many people don't respect this mayor. You cannot write an executive order from the city of Chicago that enshrines their right to protest, because that's already in the First Amendment to the Constitution. Again, and he says this like, oh, I wrote this executive order. He apparently he doesn't understand the supremacy clause. Apparently he doesn't understand that federal law supersedes state and local law. So if there was no right to protest, your right to protest is enshrined in the Constitution and the First Amendment. He did not need to write an executive order to restate a right that people already have. But this is all about optics. This is all about trying to look tough. And for the people who are really paying attention, they see right through him and they know that executive order isn't worth the paper that it's printed on. He's such an idiot.
You know, when you think about the accommodations that have been made by the public, whether it's parks, libraries, schools, transportation, these are the very things that we fought for in this country. And I'm not going to allow the federal government to trample on the very institutions that are meant to serve the public good.
Are you allowing officers to respond or to assist any agents here?
Well, according to our local ordinance, for civil immigration enforcement without a warrant, our local police department will not interfere or support those efforts. This was a measure that was signed over 40 years ago by the first black mayor in the history of Chicago, with the council, Harold Washington, with the council of Mr. James Montgomery, who was his corporate counsel at that time, who was also legal representation for the Black Panther Party. And so these two men understood that law enforcement overreach does the opposite of what we wanted to do, which is to have relationships within the community. And in order to make sure that we're building safe and affordable communities, you have to have trust between the local community and law enforcement. And that's why that ordinance was so important. And it's why we're still carrying it out today.
Let's talk a little bit more, because I wanted people to see just how beautiful Chicago is, and that it is not the hellscape that the Trump administration is portraying it to be.
Don Lemon is working overtime trying to make this mayor look good. If you go to any city in the world and you go to their downtown location, that's going to typically be the economic epicenter of that city, number one. So number two, it's going to be the most picturesque. It typically has the most security. You're standing in Daley Plaza, walking around with the mayor, trying to convince the rest of America that Chicago is not the hellhole that Donald Trump says that it is, implying that Donald Trump is prevaricating. The violence that's happening in the city of Chicago isn't happening where they are. So Don Lemon, why don't you do this, Don Lemon? The next time you want to do a walking tour with the mayor through the beautiful city of Chicago, why don't you go to Austin? Why don't you go to North Lawndale? How about Inglewood? What about Urban Gresham? I could name half a dozen to a dozen neighborhoods where you could go. And what's even sadder still, and this is where my frustration comes in. People on the right, people who are more conservative, they support Donald Trump. So when people who are conservative Republicans, they do an interview with Donald Trump, they try to make him look good. And then people on the left, like Don Lemon and Brandon Johnson, say, oh, they're just lying. They're covering up for his malfeasance and all of these other things. You can't trust the media. But then Don Lemon comes to town and does this walking tour. And, I just want to show everyone that Chicago is not the hellscape that Donald Trump says that it is. It's just so dishonest. And that's why I'm glad you're here watching this, because I'm going to always play it straight down the middle. I'm an independent. I'm a conservative independent. So I'm not here rooting for the Democrats or the Republicans. I'm rooting for what is right and what's right for everyone. Again, just a couple more minutes and we'll be out of here. Just continue to watch this.
You said that you believe that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the right wants a rematch of the Civil War?
Well, they've declared, I mean, the President of the United States of America, with his own words, has declared war on the city of Chicago. And it's clear that with all that they have proposed, going after Medicare, going after our public education systems, firing public employees, the vast majority of them are black women, withholding federal dollars for public transportation that we fought for on the south side of Chicago. I mean, he's literally attacking the very institutions that were built post-Civil War. And so they desperately want a rematch, but my commitment is to the people of this city to make sure that we are defending our democracy and protecting our humanity.
So Don Lemon tried there. He asked him, hey, you keep saying that the Trump administration wants a rematch of the Civil War. So, to the best of my recollection, is I had to take the Constitution in the 8th grade, and I had to take it again in the 11th grade in the state of Illinois, and I've read the Constitution. The Civil War was a war between the North and the South, basically about slavery. It was about states' rights and federalism, if you want to get real deep, but that actual fight was about Southern states wanted to maintain slavery, Northern states did not. So when Don Lemon asks him that question, you think that Donald Trump wants a rematch of slavery, and he says, oh, he's firing black women, and he won't give us the money for transportation, and he won't send the money for education. He was unprepared, because usually when he makes that Civil War line, he just does it in a speech where no one can actually ask him, hey, what do you mean when you say that? And once again, he fails miserably. Again, he had to make the reference to, oh, he's firing black women. I really, really hope this man is not reelected. He should never have been elected in the first place, but his ideology, his inability to answer a question, these just rehearsed, recycled trash lines that he uses at every single interview. And Don Lemon, again, is going kind of soft. Don Lemon is going very soft on him, no pun intended. But yeah, he's definitely not pressing him in this interview. Again, a couple of more seconds and we're out of here.
Standing this closely, if I was Donald Trump, standing this close to you, what would you say to him?
Invest in people, right? He's declared war on poverty. Invest in people. If you're serious about reducing crime, then restore the $800 million for violence prevention that you took out of the budget. Restore the budget for our ATF. You cut that budget by 30%. And my local law enforcement has worked with ATF to get illegal weapons off the streets of Chicago that have been illegally trafficked from states that voted for him. Yeah. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that if we're going to build safe and affordable communities, the best way to do that is by investing in people and not the ultra rich. Yeah.
So that's the end of the interview. They kind of do some wrapping up about the Chicago Marathon, but I do want to say two things really quickly. The mayor, you just heard him say if he was standing there talking to Donald Trump, he would tell Donald Trump, restore the $800 million for the city of Chicago that we were investing with violence interrupters. They call them CVI. So just so that everyone knows, Chicago Violence Interrupters, those are private organizations that are classified as 501c3s, and these are individuals who have these organizations that they go out into these neighborhoods, into these urban neighborhoods, and they do one-on-one talks, or they set up activities, or they, do things to try and engage these youth, and they try to intercede, with these youth before they actually go out there and, commit some antisocial act, whatever it might be, carjacking, robbing somebody, smashing, grabs, whatever. But here's the point. Brandon Johnson wants Washington, D.C. to send $800 million to the city of Chicago so they can disperse that money to local 501c3s. This is about a money grab. This is a money play. This has nothing to do with reducing violence. This is about Brandon Johnson wanting to get his hands on $800 million so he can give that money to his friends on the west and the south sides of Chicago, which again are private 501c3s. That is completely irresponsible. It is not the job of 501c3s to convince young people not to commit crime. You know whose responsibility that is? Their parents. It's the parents' job to get children, to raise them so they don't go out and commit crime. That's number one. But finally, number two, you heard Brandon Johnson again. He says this all the time. These guns that are coming into the state of Illinois, they're coming from these red states, and we need the cooperation from the Trump administration to stop these guns coming in to infiltrating Chicago. So someone said this to me on Friday the other day on my radio show here locally in Chicago. And they've said basically the same thing, that guns and drugs continue to infiltrate the city of Chicago, and that's the reason why the violence keeps happening. So I want to use myself as a personal example. And when I was 21 years old, I got my FOID card. That's a card in Illinois that you're required to have in order to buy a firearm. So I bought my first firearm at the age of 21 years old. I've owned firearms my entire life. I've never committed a crime with a gun. I've never shot anyone. I've never carjacked anyone at gunpoint. I've never held up a store. I've never committed any crime with a gun. You know why? Because the culture and my worldview by which I live, the morals that I have, will not allow me to go out and do that. If I get home and there's a box of guns sitting on my front porch in front of my house, I'm going to pick up the phone and call the local police department and say, hey, come get these guns. There's a box of guns sitting on my porch. I don't know to whom they belong. I don't know how they got here, but I need you to come get them. That's what I would do. So why is that important? Because I, as a legal gun owner who have had access to guns my entire life, have never committed a gun crime. Most Americans who have guns, who own guns, have never committed a gun crime. So the issue is not the gun. The issue is not the access to the gun. The gun is a tool like anything else, like a hammer, like a screwdriver, like anything else. Someone has to pick that tool up and use it. And that Brandon Johnson is so obtuse that he has convinced himself that if we can just get rid of all the guns coming into Chicago, then the violence will abate, problem solved. No, the problem is our culture, the culture of the individuals who are using these guns, the young kids who are going out there and carjacking people, the people who are going out there and committing the smash and grabs, the people who are going out there and who are committing actual antisocial behavior and crimes and gun-related crimes. Those individuals lack the morality and the culture that prevent them from entering into those types of acts. That's the real conversation that we need to have. We need a restoration and a renaissance of culture and morality. It has nothing to do with the guns. But as always, this is typical, classic Brandon Johnson. He's just getting interviewed by someone else who's just allowing him to just repeat his same throwaway, silly, far left, progressive ideological lines. And I, for one, am tired of it. I hope the people of Chicago are getting tired of it. Let's get this conversation started in the comments. Let me know. Am I off? Am I missing something? This, like I said, I'm going to put this link to this entire playlist. I've been covering this man in Chicago going back 2 years, talking about his missteps on the budget, him playing the race card, everything else. So you can go in and binge watch that. But go, like I said, the most important thing I want you to do, if you can do this for me right now, Make sure you subscribe. If you really like this video, hype it, like it. Let's get the conversation going in the comment section. This is just, like I said, the most recent example with Don Lemon. Don Lemon is this is probably the most sycophantic interview I've seen with Brandon Johnson in a while. Let me know your thoughts. I appreciate you hanging out for this long, and I'll catch you in the next one.